And guys, participate with your mind on this. Asking questions, ask me questions. This is one of the advantage of having the author here. Fern Halper, by the way, my co-author, worked for me at Bell Labs. And Fern is an oceanographer, PhD in oceanography from Texas A&M, which is one of the best universities in oceanography. And that was typical Bell Labs. You put scientists that work in different fields together to develop new ideas. And Fern is, she's alive, is a stern researcher. She is very, very tough lady. Her dissertation was about looking at the currents of Gulf of Mexico. So she knew a lot about spectral analysis, which is looking at the components of data. No, that's okay, stay there. What is this? To keep your tea warm? Oh. Did you ever see this here?
No, I just use the board.
My granddaughter has one that this is a straw, and she goes.
No bubbles?
No bubble, but yeah, she does bubbles, yes.
Chocolate milk is the best. Illegible, but anyway, so this paper is a discussion of the movement, and well, the paper is dated, so a lot of what is said is probably obvious to a lot of people now, about 25 years later. But this is when companies initially moved to computers, and so up until this point, essentially everything was being done by paper, by hand, and companies are now shifting everything onto the computer, which changes things from an auditing perspective. So the major changes would be that whereas until now everything was on paper, now everything's on computer. Everything that's happening, instead of being recorded by hand, is now recorded by computer. There's a few problems with paper. With computers. And that is, if you, let's say, want to commit fraud, then you would have to change papers which are written in ink, and ink is not really erasable, and you cannot change that. Whereas on a computer, if you have access to the file, you can go and change a record and no one will ever know the difference. And of course, we know we have a lot of problems with that nowadays with hacking. Another thing is papers are stored in a room. You can place a guy outside with a gun, and no one can enter the room and do anything with the papers or see them or anything like that. A computer, well, if you have access to the file, again, you can do whatever you want with the file, with records, databases, anything like that. And the last thing is, if you're going to audit a computer system and the auditor has no idea how to use the computer system, then whichever company employee is assigned to help them out is going to be the one doing it. Of course, if that employee wants to commit fraud, it is going to be relatively easy for that employee to just filter what he's giving the auditor, and the auditor will have no idea. And so what this paper presents is what's called a continuous process auditing methodology. And the idea is that a system should be set up that instead of at the end of the year the auditor starts going over all the records, the data is constantly being monitored, all the transactions are being monitored by the system using a set of rules which should be set up by an auditor. So what the advantage would be is, of course, that now all transactions can be monitored in real time. So as they're happening, if it violates a rule, it can alert the auditor. The rules are, so the rules would be set up by the auditor. Question? No? Oh. The rules would be set up by the auditor in order to catch any potential exceptions. Another advantage is that instead of the auditor taking a sample of several million transactions and take 100 of them, now since everything is being monitored, if any of them are flagged, then the auditor will know about it. To implement such a system, the auditor would first have to have an overview of how the company's system works, and then set up some way to view everything, all the business processes in the company. And there should be a way for an auditor to have drill down capabilities in the sense that if there is some problem, let's say, you know, too much money is sent out on a bill or something like that, then they can open up that bill and look in and see how the bill was generated and why it went wrong and where the error came from. The other thing the auditor has to set up would be set up baseline measurements, so kind of look and see what all the metrics coming out of the system should be, so that you can have a normal range that those numbers should be in. And then you create a rule that if the system comes up with some measurement outside that baseline, that normal operating range, it should send an alarm to either the auditor and or management. There should be different levels of the alarms. You have more severe alarms, less severe alarms, and obviously more severe alarms would have to be acted on more rapidly. The other thing a CPAS system should have is several of the features that it should have is it should have a visualization package. So there should be a way to view it in graphs or in scatter plots or in pie charts or whatever different ways of making it easier to detect anomalies and problems. There should be a statistical package so that you can figure out if something is actually an anomaly, statistically speaking. A database filter so you can hunt through millions of records and quickly and easily find the ones that you want. And of course, the advantage of this is that now a lot of auditing tests that auditors would have liked to do, which could not be done by hand and using paper, can now be done by computer. And this should bring a major advantage to auditing. So the pros of the CPAS system is that it leads to better auditing because it's faster, it's more reliable, it's not so prone to human error unless they mess up the programming. It's more timely because it can monitor transactions in real time instead of at the end of the year, and so management can know about a problem before it's too late. And it can monitor all transactions as opposed to just a sample. Of course, their problem with such a system is the initial implementation costs a lot of money, and all the auditors have to be trained in how to use such a system. But since it leads to such a better audit, it is, of course, the advantages outweigh the disadvantage, of course. And that's the end.
Good. Andrea? I will discuss your discussions when you're done, when she's done.
Do you want me to go up?
Sure, however you want.
Okay.
You're plugging into the computer?
Oh, I already.
Oh, it's right. No, it's just it's on.